This is a original PAF spec'd humbucking pickup that I just completed. It's got all the original specs, the original PAFs, nickel screws, nickel slugs. It's got the 49.2 millimeter base plate. It's got brass mounting screws for the bobbins. It's got the original bobbin material and the original hookup wire, the Gibson hookup wire. So every part of it has been replicated. Makes a fantastic pickup, and this is one I wound for the bridge, and it's 7.8K ohms. So now I'm going to do the neck, and I figure I'd do a video showing how I did it. So that'll be next. Here's a look of all the parts and pieces before I begin. We'll start with the wire here. I'm using a 42 gauge wire, copper magnet wire. It's the only thing that's not going to be vintage spec is the wire. I'm going to use a single poly nylon wire on here instead of a poly enamel wire that was used on the originals, but the customer prefers to have this wire for the brighter tone. Anyway, these are the parts and pieces. Got a maple spacer that was originally used, 10-hole keeper bar. This is the magnet, and it's Alnico 2. Gonna make for a great pickup. Alright, first thing we have to do is connect the lead, the start lead, which I do in black. The original PAFs, both the start and the finish, were in black, but I do black for the start and white for the finish. But anyway, you have to start. So you take the magnet wire, very thin, and you want to wind it around the lead wire here. Kind of hard when you got fat fingers, but there we go. Wow. I don't even know if you can see the wire, it's so thin. But here we go. Gonna heat it up. Basically solder the wire. Onto the lead wire. Really hard when you're working with this wire that's thinner than a hair. But anyway, there we go. It's all on there. Yeah. I'm just going to nip off the excess wire here. Now you have to be very careful with this because, I mean, you just sneeze on it and you'll break it. Alright, so. Okay, the next step, I've mounted the bobbin. Well, you can see this in the light, but I mounted the bobbin onto my pickup winder. And here's the soldered lead. See if I can get a real close up of this. This camera sucks. Anyway, there we go. There's the lead, and I have it taped onto the winding arm here of my pickup winder. And here's the bobbin, and it's just mounted with some double face tape. Okay. There we go. That's how we get started. And after this bobbin is wound, then I tape the lead onto the coil. I'll show you that when I get to it. Alright, this is kind of hard to show, but I've got the these bobbin these set screws right here adjusted to the width of the bobbin. You want to keep the wire just inside the lip on each side of the bobbin so you don't catch it on anything. Alright, now I've got it on here, and you want to do it by hand. 11 or 12 winds here to get it started, and test your bobbin. Make sure. See, I'm a little close to the outside edge here, so I'm actually gonna move that just a tiny bit in. There we go, that's good. I'm just staying on the inside of the lip. Maybe. Alright. There we go. Now this is my winder. I have it mounted. I have a foot switch down here that I use to operate it. So here we go. I hold it by hand. The spool is down on the floor between my legs, just standing upright. Alright, I'm going to slow it down a little. You want to get started, you don't want to go too fast. And this is a long process. I'm just going back and forth, trying to keep just the right amount of tension. If you squeeze too tight, this wire will just snap and you'll have to start all over. And you want to keep it nice and even on the bobbin. You just move back and forth. Okay, just like that. I'm just slowly going back and forth. I try to get about 60 to 70 winds each time I make a pass. Now the original PAFs were machine wound, not hand wound. And if you really want to try to duplicate the sound, you want to try to be as even as possible. Although if you scatter wind, moving it back and forth like this, you'll get a unique tone. And you can't recreate every single pickup you wind. Even if you wind the exact amount of winds, it's going to sound a little different just because of the way the wire is wrapped on the coil. So I've done about 600 winds. I'm going to stop and check it. What you want to make sure is that the wire hasn't gone over the lip anywhere. It's winding really nice. So now I'm going to speed it up a little, because I'm going to shoot for about 5,200 winds here. This is probably going to make for some pretty boring video. So I'm actually holding it with two hands. My first hand up here I'm using to bring it back and forth between the set screws here. And I'm keeping my eye on the counter. I've got a counter up here. I'm at 1100 winds. I'm trying to get around 60 winds to 70 winds across the set screws. This takes some practice. The first time you do it, you'll break the wire. I broke the wire many times and had to start over. You can solder the wire back on, but it's kind of a pain, and I don't trust it, but I have done it and it works fine. But this is how you do it. I'm stopping and checking the coil. You want to make sure you're winding evenly. I'm a little light on the right side here, so I'm going to put a few winds on here and then start going back and forth again, just like this. Okay, now I'm going to speed it up. There we go. I still occasionally break a wire, but not very often. Another good thing about using the single poly nylon wire is it seems to be a lot smoother and come out of your hands a lot smoother. So if anyone's going to try this for the first time, I'd recommend buying the single poly nylon. It's also a lot cheaper than like the form bar or the poly enamel wire. It feels a lot rougher going through your fingers, easier to break. So now I'm up to 2,500 lines, about halfway there. Alright, so I'm going to stop it and turn this off because you're probably going to get bored here, but I'll come back after I get this coil wound. Alright, here's the coil. Now this is the screw side bobbin, not the slug side. This is the one you're going to want to start with. Well, it's one I start with, and you're going to want to wind on a PAF slightly mismatched coils. So I may wind, see here I wound 5350 and I stopped. And now on the next coil I'm probably going to wind maybe 5200, maybe 5100. I want to get a slightly mismatched coil. It adds to the sound, making them unique, and I really don't know why they sound better, but they do. So anyway, there's the coil. See if we get a good close-up of it. There's the copper. Okay. You want it pretty tight. You don't want it really spongy. You wind it too loose and you're gonna have problems, and too tight and you'll wind up actually you can bend the bobbin, but you want it pretty tight. There you go. It's now I'm gonna tape this lead onto this bobbin and then solder on the finished lead and tape it onto the bobbin. So that's next. Alright, I started with this tape right here. This is actually pickup tape, coil tape. And I put a piece on the copper, just a short piece. And now I'm going to untape my start wire here. You gotta be very careful because you can just break this. And you do not want to break the start because there's no way to fix it because the coil's all covered over the start. It's underneath, so if you break this you'll have to cut it all off and start over, which I've done lots of times, so I don't want to do it again. So I'm just going to put a piece of tape on here to hold it very carefully. I'm trying to do this so you can still see. It's not easy. Anyway, like that. There you go. Now I'm going to take the bobbin off and just wrap the tape all the way around it a few times. Alright, I've got the white, which is going to be the finish lead, and here I'm going to do the same thing I did at the beginning. Carefully wrap the coil wire around this wire quite a few times. Okay, just like that. I'm going to solder it. So it's going to come around like this, right onto here. Actually, I think I'm going to give it a few more turns. Kind of tedious, but there you go. It's going to come around tape onto the coil right here. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to, before I tape it all up, check and make sure I've got a good connection. I hooked it up to my ohm meter at about 20k ohms. You want to check the leads. About 4.08. Perfect. So now I'm going to finish putting the tape on the coil. And you're going to do this very carefully. I'm just going to put a piece on here. There we go. Very carefully. I'm not used to trying to video this and do it at the same time. Makes it hard. But anyway, here we go. I'm just going to tape the coil. There we go. I don't know if you can see this too well, but there it is with the start and the finish. I'm going to do the next one.